Welcome into the Sports Objective, a very special night. We've got a very special guest. I knew it was going to be a big night when we have our first guest on. I had no idea when we started today that we had a good feeling, but obviously Oklahoma and Texas looks like moving to the SEC. But with us right now, we're going to be talking some UNC football. And with us right now, the color analyst for UNC football, that would be Brian Simmons. How are you, man? Good to have you on tonight.
I'm doing good, Dave, and I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. We're going to be talking, obviously, UNC football in just a minute. Want to get your take on things. We were talking just in the green room right before the show. You being, I know, the Tar Heels radio color analyst, you have obviously the duties of the Tar Heels, but from your perspective of the ACC and the Tar Heels, does that affect you guys with Oklahoma and Texas? Do you have any idea if that will affect the ACC, the Tar Heels? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you know, with the way the landscaping is going now, when one conference decides to kind of expand, you can almost guarantee that the other Power 5 conference will look to do the same, because it's all about, especially in the SEC, in the case of Oklahoma and Texas, those are not just your run-of-the-mill schools. Those are blue bloods, and they have a big footprint in college football. So you can expect the ACC, the Big Ten, the Pac-12 to try to expand. My question is, what's going on with the Big 12? Because you hear about Kansas, a couple other schools looking to get out. So to me, when I heard that was my first question. Like, what's going on? They know something that the rest of us must not know.
Well, obviously with Oklahoma and Texas, it's not their first time. I think they pacified them about 10 years ago. Was it 2010? And then you have a situation where they made it another decade. It's kind of like it looks like it could be a bad divorce ahead, who knows? But, when you have those two schools and they're looking like, I guess, they're taking care of the rest of the league, so to speak, when it's only now 10 teams, then they're carrying the weight for a whole bunch of, that's the way I guess they're taking it. But if you're looking at the other schools, I just don't see how the Big 12 survives. And I don't want to make it a whole show about that, but it looks like to me that it could be a case where the Big 12 is dying. And so those guys are saying, okay, this ship is sinking. Where do we go? Yep. And that'll be the interesting take. Like you said, it could be the ACC. It could be Big 10 with I'm hearing that Iowa State and Kansas, that I can't think of the name of the organization off the top of my head, but there's a couple schools that would be likely go to the Big 10 because they are, I guess, accredited by that association, the academic association. And the Big 10, and another thing, as I was going to mention to you, the ACC, right before we came on, the ACC, for those that think, let me just say this, and I know you mentioned it, so I know you'll feel comfortable mentioning it, but the fact is there are a lot of folks out there that don't understand that. They say the ACC is going to pick up West Virginia, and I said, no, they're not. And I know you mentioned that right before we started.
No. Yeah, no, I full-heartedly agree with you. I don't see that as being a matchup or a marriage, have you. Just from a academic standpoint, mostly, West Virginia was a school that was brought up, in ACC talks a while back, kind of when the Syracuse and the Boston College. It was a reason they went that route with the Syracuse and the Boston College, just because of the academic. The ACC wants to compete, obviously, in championships with athletics, but academics is a very strong part of what the ACC feels like they are. They're universities that compete at a high level on the field, but also are very high level in the classroom.
No question about it, being an ACC country, even though that we follow a team that's in the American with the East Carolina. When you look at North Carolina, you look at North Carolina State, you look at Duke, you look at Wake Forest, Clemson. I mean, you get Georgia Tech. You're not going to be any of those schools I just rattled off the top of my head. Miami, Florida State. Yep. You're not going to get in if you're not the sharpest guy. So I definitely don't need to. If I go back to graduate school, I definitely don't need to go there. But seriously, when West Virginia, I mean, stranger things have happened. I didn't think this. I thought this would happen. I just didn't think it would happen to. I thought it would be Pac-12. I didn't think it would be this route. So the surprise for me was not that they were leaving; it's where they're going to for Oklahoma and Texas.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm more surprised that they're leaving. Period. Right. So then if you take those two schools and you say, okay, where are you going? To me, it makes sense to go to the SEC, right? Because
Oh yeah.
everybody considers the SEC the top, the top dog. So I'll say this, obviously when these moves happen, it's about one thing, right? And it's money. Okay. And so can we just stop saying that college football is amateurism? Can we just throw that out, right? We know that college football is amateur sport. So I hope these type of moves just get people talking and just be realistic. There's nothing wrong with it, right? We can agree on how much kids should be paid or what the compensation should be or how it should be paid and all that. But the kids should get paid some kind of way.
No question. I think that's the thing that everybody needs to come to the table is that I think most people would be smart enough to say there needs to be compensation. I think that's where the problem lies is not about compensation. It's how to compensate and how much. I don't think there's not many out there that are going to say at this point in the game, so to speak, that they shouldn't be paid. That's a question of when do you pay them? How much do you pay them? And then the question of like with your top stars, is there a certain like amount they're going to say, well, this rookie gets this amount for a freshman or, like those kind of things I think will be where we are coming up in the next, who knows, things have happened this last year. That's what I was going to ask you with just thinking back over the last year, we've had COVID-19, the transfer portal was huge now. You have name, image, and likeness. You have the college football expansion and now college football realignment. I mean, like that's 5 things I'm thinking of off the top of my head right now. So it's 5 things in just a year's time. So it's amazing. I guess it's a great time for those of us that are in sports with the media, and your case as a radio analyst on the Tar Heel Sports Network. You have a lot of stuff to talk about, right? And then when you have this situation, I know you guys have got to be excited. You have a great guy personally in Mac Brown. You have shifting gears now to talk Tar Heels. You have a situation where the guy can recruit like nobody's business, like nobody else. Yep. All you do is say, I'm Mac Brown. And speaking of Texas, a guy that won a national championship with Vince Young, he knows he's been to the top. The previous time, I guess you could call this now Mac Brown 2.0. Previously, he had North Carolina right there with Florida State back in the early 90s. As I remember those, was it 2 or 3 years in a row with the game of the century? Yeah. So you have a guy that definitely has put Tar Heel football on the map. And then I heard recently, was a couple weeks ago, you've sold out your season tickets. I mean, you expect that for college basketball with UNC, but having Mac Brown has made a huge difference as far as getting the excitement back, don't you think, for Tar Heel football?
Absolutely, and that's what Mac does. Mac does 2 things that he does really well. One is recruiting, but the second one is selling his program. And obviously you have to sell your program to recruits, but you also have to sell your program to the boosters, to administration on campus, to the community. And nobody does that better than Coach Brown. And that's what he does. He brings kids in and they see a clear vision of what he has in store for the program. And then he's also able to go out and take that vision and share it with boosters and people that raise money in order to fund things that he wants to get done to make what he feels, to do things that he feels to make the program better.
It's just amazing how I know that it's a staff. I'm not taking, and you obviously have recruiting, but just having that name, those 2 names, Mac Brown, and you have the recruiting is going well now. And I saw where the media days, wasn't it, that the Tar Heels are number 1 as far as media predicting them to finish preseason pick of first in the Coastal, I believe, if my memory serves me right. I was reading yesterday. So, I mean, it's like just that guy. I don't want to make it again about Mac Brown because I know it's a team sport, but it really, I always say you're only as good as the top, meaning this particular case, the head coach. He's smart enough to have a great coaching staff. We know those guys that can go out and recruit. He's very good with motivation. I'm sure if I were there, I don't have the talent to play Division I, but if I were there, I would definitely put on the shoulder pads and be fired up and play for him because of who the guy is.
Right. No question. And listen, he is a college football Hall of Famer, right? So that tells you enough right there. Like he's done a lot of things to get that tag and to earn that respect. So, with that, you look at his track record and he's won. He turned Carolina. I played for Mac when the first time around,
Right.
and he did the same thing. Then goes to Texas, obviously turns them into a powerhouse, wins a national championship, and then he comes back in Carolina. And I think anybody who has been watching Carolina football for the last 6 years or so, they thought that Coach Brown would turn it around, but I think everybody would agree that they're probably a little ahead of schedule.
No question, but I think that the reputation precedes him, and I mean that in a good way. Obviously, what he's done, he built a program, obviously at North Carolina with your time in the early, of course, he came there in the late '80s, but by the early '90s, man, that program was full steam ahead. And I know that's one of the things that people knew that when he would come back, like you said, that he would definitely do a great job, and that everything would be. I think that's the key for Mac this time around, is to get things back on track. To certainly with the program, when you talk about athletics, you talk about academics. Yep. There's a lot of great things that are going there, and he can really sell the recruiting. As far as the Tar Heels are concerned, one of the things I'm hearing is Clemson, like leaving. People are talking about that. And the same thing for Oklahoma and Texas. I think that North Carolina, for example, there are a lot of schools that why would they leave the Atlantic Coast Conference when if you win the ACC championship, you're going to be in the playoff. Yeah. So it's a clear path. Now, if I go to the SEC, yeah, we have more money. Or if I go to the Big Ten, yeah, we have more money. But there are no disrespect to the ACC. But if you look at the Southeastern Conference and now you're adding Oklahoma and Texas, it's like
the road's a little bumpy.
Like they're eating each other alive. They have like a 6-6, 7-5 record, yep. Where you might be able to run the table in the Atlantic Coast Conference, or you have a really good year, 10-2 or something, and it puts you in to me, a better spot. But that's just me. I'm not knocking the SEC. I just think that with the Atlantic Coast Conference and Clemson, for example, they've won so many championships and they're in that picture. They don't have to do anything to get in that conversation of the national championship. They're there.
Yep. Yeah, no, I would be surprised if a team like Clemson went anywhere, and if they went anywhere, it would be the SEC, right? And I just don't see them. I don't see them doing that, because here's what you got to realize too: like South Carolina is going to pitch a fit if they start talking about Clemson being in the SEC, and so I don't think that's going to happen, and I don't think Clemson is looking to make that happen. To be honest with you, I think, with this landscape changing, the ACC is going to be a power broker in it. They're not going to be one of those conferences that get rated, right? They're going to be one of the ones that go out and get, because they have a lot to offer. They have a great media market. They obviously the all sports, not just football and basketball, but all your Olympic sports are really good. The academic level, as we talked about, is high. So the ACC is going to be a power broker in this thing here to come, and who knows how it's going to play out. But I would be shocked if Clemson goes anywhere.
We have in the green room, I want to bring in now to the conversation with us, James Sunhalter. Jay is with us tonight. He actually played for the Pirates under Skip Holtz, and he joins us now. Sonny, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I hope you guys are. I'm down in Charlotte right now, and it's a monsoon. So,
oh my goodness, I think it's coming our way for sure. We wanted to have you on there, Jay, and we're talking to Brian Simmons here with the Tar Heel Sports Network. Jay, we were talking about obviously Oklahoma and Texas. We're talking about that and how that would affect the Tar Heels. Brian, I wanted to ask you, and then we'll talk specifically about Tar Heels, I promise. But if you were the commissioner of the ACC, is there a school that you would do you have in mind, or a few schools that you think that fit the ACC? Obviously, the first one that comes to mind, obviously, can you find a way to get Notre Dame in there as a member? I know it's very difficult.
That was my answer, right? At a certain point, it's like, at a certain point, we can continue to act like we're boyfriend and girlfriend, but it's time to commit now, right? And so for me, that's where Notre Dame is. I love John Swofford. He was the AD at Carolina when I was there, right. But he had a better heart than I do, because last year when Notre Dame would have been struggling to find games, that would have been the year that they would have had to make a decision, right? You're either all in the ACC or you're not in at all. and I wouldn't have come to the rescue for those guys last year. So you took that right out of my mouth. It's Notre Dame. That's where I would start and end with.
No question about it, Sonny. I know that this is one thing that we're going to be talking about. How do you think, Brian, as far as a group of five, do you think those of us that are obviously follow East Carolina, we've got a lot of great schools. There's a scenario in there too that they could actually, the Big 12 could actually merge with the American. That's something I heard today with Mike Oresco, the commissioner of the American. That might be a possibility. What are your thoughts on that, guys?
You can have it at first, Jay.
Well, I just think on that, the AAC, that's what the AAC would want. And I saw the article, and they're going to be aggressive and everything. I mean, I've also, heard and seen other things about, 4 super conferences with 16 teams each. I just think, everybody's going to be jockeying. I think there's a lot of things that are, still going to happen that no one's even talked about. But I mean, for the American, in order to be viewed as one of the big ones, the top conferences, they're going to have to try to go raid and get some of those teams from the Big 12 if that does disband. Now, will that happen? I mean, they're going to have other suitors from the Pac-12 and, some of these other conferences, maybe even the Big 10 possibly. So I think it's kind of like, everyone's going to be kind of trying to find a partner on the dance floor, and there's going to be some teams left out. But I think the Americans' play is to be aggressive. Now, whether they can get that done or not, I think a lot's going to come down to money and then what the other opportunities are for the schools that are kind of looking for a spot.
Yeah.
And you,
I think it, kind of what Jay said, but I think it's going to be the flip, right? I think there's going to be conferences that look to pull some of the AAC schools out versus the AAC school versus AAC conference bringing, a Power 5 school in. That makes sense. So
I agree, Brian. Yeah, completely. Yeah.
Look for some conference to try to pull out Central Florida or Memphis or one of those schools, East Carolina or whoever it may be, USF. I think that's what it's going to be, more strategic, trying to pull out because for me, like, UCF is ready, like UCF in terms of football. But here's the thing that people don't realize: conferences don't only play one sport, right? They play multiple sports. So if you let's just take UCF out. If you pull UCF out and you put them in the ACC, could they compete in the ACC in football? Yeah, most weekends they could. But all the other sports, it would be non-competitive most of the time. So that's what people has to realize. Yeah, football and basketball carries the pail, but when conferences start doing it, they look at multiple things in multiple sports.
and one of the things in the Big 12, the whole idea that a lot of people think the Big 12 was going to, the previous time it was correct that they could have, their time to pull from other schools and to make it a solid conference was the last time around. Because this time around, that's why Oklahoma and Texas left, because the television deal was not there for the Big 12 like they thought it would be. And so when if they add even Central Florida, Memphis, even the best of the American, they're still not going to get the deal that they wanted. So that's the thing. The Big 12 is dying. I'm not I'm not a betting man. Anything can happen, and they could stay the same. But I think this time with Oklahoma and Texas leaving, that was the death knell. It was, and so anything's possible. We'll see how it's going. Let's talk about how are things as far as the spring practice for the Tar Heels, and let's talk about UNC and Chapel Hill. We talked about season tickets selling out. We talked about the excitement. We talked about Mac Brown. But what about talk about the recruiting wise and obviously spring football? How did it go for you guys?
I mean, I think it went well. I think they're really excited about the class that's coming in or that's already in. And then next year's class, obviously they go ahead and move on and they're excited about what they have coming in. And they like the young kids that they have. Now, listen, on offense, they got to replace a lot of production. They got to replace Michael Carter, Javonte Williams, Daz Newsome, and I'm forgetting freaking De'Ami Brown. That's a lot of production, right? Now, it makes it easier to replace that production when you got Sam Howell as your quarterback, right?
Right.
but you find some guys who can make a little magic when the pigskin touch their hand, and that's what they have to figure out. They have to figure out Ty Chandler, the transfer from Tennessee, will probably be the starter at running back. Now I got to figure out who's going to be my second guy at running back. I got to figure out, who's going to be my go-to guy, who's on the outside, who's going to be my deep threat. They got all those questions answered. They bring back their offensive line mostly intact. They're big, they're athletic, so they should be pretty much ready to go at the offensive line. But in terms of playmakers, there's a lot of questions that have to be answered.
No question. If you want to submit your questions tonight, you can do so. Our great producer, Bubba Rosenbaum, he was out. He couldn't. He doesn't have a great connection, but I guess good enough to ask this. He says, Brian is someone who played for Mac Brown and is currently close to the program. What are the qualities that make him such a great recruiter?
Mac just has great people skills, right? He understands how to talk to people. He understands how to relate to people. He's if he came into your house today, you introduce him to your wife, to your kids, right, to your dog. He come back to your house 3 months and he remembers everybody's name, right?
Wow.
And that's just Mac. Like he understands people. And I'll say this: I think this version of Mac is better than the version that I got. And
wow.
The simple reason why I say that is because now he doesn't care about all that other stuff. Like when I had him the first time around, I think that he was concentrating on doing a good job at Carolina, but I also think that as he showed, he was willing to move on, right? So I think everything that he did was about putting something on the resume, how I'm perceived, and he was almost to a fault. Mac was worried about everything, like some of the small stuff that didn't matter. And now he's more relaxed. Winning a national championship and being in the Hall of Fame will do that for you, right? He got enough money in the bank. So he'll say that now. He's like, I'm not worried about them firing me. He's not looking for another job. This will be his last head coaching job. So he's just being himself, being free. And I think the kids benefit. This version of Mac is the 2.0 version is better than the 1.0 version.
No question about it. And I know when it comes to you guys start on the road in Blacksburg on September 3rd,
Yep.
Labor Day weekend. I know the guys have got to be chomping the bit. I know we're almost there, about a week away from fall camp. Yep. What are things what's on your mind going into fall camp as being a former player for the Tar Heels? And I tell you what, you guys have one of the best stadiums as far as aesthetically. It's one of the prettiest stadiums in America. Keenan Stadium, have been there several times in my day for various games, but you got a good game day atmosphere, especially when what happens is when you have a winner like Mac Brown, you excited up the fan base like we talked about, and you're selling those tickets when you don't have the fans, no matter where you are in any part of the nation, including in Pirate Nation, East Carolina. If you're losing and you've lost the team in the locker room, it shows with you're not selling tickets. So now with Mac Brown coming back, a lot of promise in 19. I know COVID hurt a lot of teams in 2020, off the field and on the field. How are things looking?
I mean, I think they have a chance to be really good if they're not thinking about how good they can be or how good people tell them they can be, right? You got to respect the process, go through the process, keep your head down, do the work. And I think if you remember the Florida State game this past season, that is what happens when you start feeling too good about yourself, right? And the other team's not going to feel quite as good about you as you feel about yourself. And they was in for a rude awakening when they went to Tallahassee. And that's what this year's going to be from day one. Virginia Tech, they hear what people saying about North Carolina. They think they're going to win the Coastal. They're supposed to be this. They got a Heisman Trophy candidate at quarterback, blase, whatever. Other teams don't care about that, right? Have you been working? Do you respect the process? And each week you go out there with an opportunity to show everybody how good of a football team you are. And people not going to take for granted that you're a good football team just because people say you're supposed to be good.
And we have another question from Bubba here. He says, when Coach Brown returned, there was a talent deficiency on defense. Talk about the strides made there.
Yeah. Well, listen, in my opinion, like how good Carolina football can be this year is going to be based upon the defense. Can this defense get better? And can this defense play good defense consistently? And that's been the problem. Like last year, they had some games where they played pretty good. They had some quarters where they played pretty good. They had some halves that they played pretty good, but they couldn't string together 2, 3, 4 games. And that's how you become good, because you're gonna almost be able to roll the football out and Sam's gonna give you 35 points, right? That's almost gonna be a guarantee. And so can this defense play consistently good football? Doesn't mean they have to be dominant, right? If they're not stout against the run, just don't eliminate explosive plays and create turnovers. And that's where they need to get a lot better. They haven't created turnovers. And you look at their recruiting, they're getting bigger. Like that's the thing, Mac. He wants, especially up front. You know, the D linemen that they're bringing in now, those guys, they're starting to be 6'4", 6'5", whereas before they were not so much prototype. They're prototype guys. Like when I was in school, the Vonnie Hollidays, the Marcus Jones, the Greg Ellises, right, the Rick Terrys. I didn't play with a defensive lineman that was shorter than 6'4", you know. So those are the type of guys that he's recruiting, and they got to figure out what are we going to be at linebacker, because they got a bunch of, obviously Jeremiah Gemmel comes back, but after that they got a bunch of young kids who haven't had a lot of experience, and they feel good about them, but they haven't played enough football for you to feel really good about what you have. So that, to me, that is the biggest question mark. The linebackers, and now can that secondary, which they like all those guys, can those guys turn the corner, right? Can now we start being a productive group that gets our hands on the football and don't let the ball go over our head in critical situations?
Sonny, did you have a question? I know that you've been patiently waiting there. I don't know if we.
Well, first of all, Brian, you're a hell of a player. And,
well, that's used to. I'm 46, so I can't play anything right now. So
yeah, you still got it. My biggest issue now is just making sure I don't pull a hamstring.
Yeah, I hear you.
But talk a little bit about when you were being recruited, and I got a bunch of buddies that played at New Bern. I know you're from down there, just that community and kind of your high school experience and going to Carolina.
Yeah. For me, being from New Bern, North Carolina, I was a North Carolina guy. Like I was a University of North Carolina guy. And I say it jokingly, any dollar that they spent recruiting me was a waste of money, because I was going to Carolina when they offered me. So, I wanted to stay in state. So really it came down to Carolina, Duke, and NC State for me. Obviously I'm a down East guy. So, I've always had a, place in my heart for East Carolina. But for me, once I made the decision about staying in state, it really was between Carolina, Duke, and NC State. And I was a Carolina fan growing up, so it was an easy choice for me.
And Brian,
go ahead, Dave.
I just had one to follow up to that about being from New Bern. And I know you're a North Carolina guy, but when you look at an East Carolina program and you have a guy like Mike Houston who's doing a nice job of recruiting, you're a local kid from like New Bern. How do you keep those? Is it winning? What does it take for a kid? And I know you're from a different generation. Obviously, they're a new generation of kids now. But what is it that keeps a kid home and local to Eastern North Carolina, 252 area code, if you will?
It's really about setting a foundation of relationships with the high schools in the area. And you got to start going into all these high schools, especially down east, and building that relationship with the coaches. And they may not have a guy until 2 years from now, but you've already built that relationship. And now they see East Carolina as a viable option. But if you're at East Carolina, because you have NC State, because you have Duke, because you have North Carolina and Wake Forest in, you also have to have some patience in recruiting. Meaning, I have to be willing to recruit some guys who I understand that, listen, we're going to have to get them on campus. We're going to have to feed them and get them in the weight room. And in 2 years, they'll be a really good player for us, right? For the first 2 years, they're probably going to be more of a developmental type guy. But in 2 years, we should have a good player. And that has to be part of your process also.
No question. You also have the fact that you were talking about that. That's one thing that people don't realize in North Carolina, as far as the state of North Carolina, how many we have, 7 Division I schools,
yes,
including App State. So it's some of the schools like where you talk about Clemson. I know they're more national brand now, but Clemson and South Carolina, and I know now you have Coastal now
Yeah.
coming in the mix, but for the most part, it's Clemson or South Carolina is getting most of the talent in the Palmetto State. But certainly, when it comes to recruiting too, it's going to this whole transfer portal thing. Want to get your thoughts on that? It's driving me crazy because as a former player, I kind of see it. I see it where things may not work out at the school that you're at. So I understand that the one-time leaving thing. But what I'm upset about is these kids that are leaving. And then I heard it talked about today, so I want to mention to you tonight about the kids that are leaving in the transfer portal and they have nowhere to go. That's what I'm worried about as far as our you talk about academics earlier, like we're talking about. Most important thing is for you to get a great education, like we're talking about UNC, ECU, wherever you get the education. But if you're in that transfer portal, it's like no man's land. It's like you're there and you have no, I mean, where else can you go?
Yeah, no, and that's the I use the word sad, but it's not necessarily sad, but that's the down part of it. I know at one point this summer there was like 19 kids in the portal, and I think like 400 found a new home, and then that left like 1,500 kids just sitting in the portal. And so I will say this: if you're a kid out there and you're thinking about going to transfer portal, you better have in mind where you're going to land before you go in, right? Don't go in and then try to figure it out, because if I'm at school A and I'm thinking about leaving and I go into the portal, well, guess what? School A is probably done with me, right? My scholarship there is no more. So you better know or have a good idea about where I'm going to land before I leave school A.
No question. What do you, as far as the Tar Heels, I know you're not Nostradamus, but a prognosticator, but what do you, how do you feel about MAC? Obviously, this is most definitely a bold team when their predictions of winning the Coastal. Do you see this being a Clemson, North Carolina matchup as far as the ACC championship? I mean, it seems like that's a safe bet right now, but the Tar Heels look like they have a good shot to be there, right, in Charlotte?
No, I mean, they definitely have a good shot. I mean, but listen, if you told me I had to bet, I would be willing to bet, but I wouldn't put all my chips on the table. And so, because to me, they still have a lot of questions that need to be answered. And mostly, I'm just not sure about defense. And so, do they have a great opportunity to represent the Coastal in the ACC championship? Absolutely. But sitting right here today, would I stand on the table and say they're going to be the Coastal champions? I love Carolina more than anybody, but I couldn't do it right now.
No doubt about it. As far as what are some players, what are players that you're looking for this year? There's some that maybe, like what came to mind, I wanted to ask you tonight is when Mac Brown was talking about, we were talking about earlier about players that on the offensive side of the ball that production as far as having to replace. And he said, I'm paraphrasing him, talking about that they're guys you just don't know yet that can step into those roles. And I know that might be coach speak, but do you believe that there are guys that they're coming up that are, like, in other words, the next man up now that can replace a lot of those guys you were talking about earlier?
I mean, listen, that is the mentality that you have to have, right? The next man up. But, and this is not a knock on anybody, because I think they got a lot of young, good football players, but they don't have a Michael Carter next year. Now, they may have a kid in the locker room that may develop to Michael Carter in a couple of years, but they don't have a Michael Carter or Javonte Williams or De'Ami Brown for that matter. So that's not a knock on those guys. And that's not saying the other guys like the Emory Simmons or the Josh Hendersons and all those other guys who are going to step up, the Josh Downs, those type of guys. I think those guys are going to be productive players. But I think if we sit here and say we're not going to lose skip a beat listen, they lost 5 draft picks last year, right? They had 5 seniors, and all 5 of them got drafted. So, they lost some really good football players. Like Michael Carter was a great football player. Javonte Williams was a great football player. De'Ami Brown was a very good football player. And we didn't talk about Chad Surratt, right? And so they lost to some guys with a lot of production, and you also lose leadership. So they're losing a lot. But if I'm one of the younger guys that's left in the locker room, I'm excited, right? I get an opportunity now, I get an opportunity to show what I can do. And if I'm a running back, I've been behind Javonte Williams and Michael Carter. They just set the stage because everybody now is saying, what's going to happen at running back? Well, I get a chance to answer that question for you. So if I'm one of those guys, I'm excited about this year coming up.
You were talking about that very thing. They are special players, and the reason we call them special players is those are talent. Some of those guys are generational players. When you're talking about draft picks, I mean, how many schools can say outside of the ones we know in the college football playoff that had 5 drafted? You know what I mean? Like that's big time. And certainly with those guys coming up, we'll have to see how they do. But it's still, that's one of the things you talk about. You know, I always tell my son, who's 8 years old now, potential is very dangerous, because just because people are telling you, patting you on the back, you got that, in particular case now with baseball with him, just because you had that big hit on Friday night doesn't mean that you're going to win the state championship. It's just that moment. And potential is very dangerous. Just because those guys have a lot of potential, they were great high school players, but how is that going to translate to college, especially at the stage you're in at North Carolina, when you have a guy like Mack Brown and the expectations of Mack Brown and his staff?
Yeah, no question. And potential without work ethic is a negative, right? You know, if you don't give me potential if you don't have work ethic, because a guy without the work ethic, it doesn't matter how high his ceiling is, he's always going to be an underachiever. So, you know, and that's why I said earlier, like, I hope those guys are not reading everything that's being said about them individually and collectively. I hope they've just gone through the off season with their head down, working, and be mad, right? Be mad, because here's the crazy thing about last season. It was a great season. They went to the Orange Bowl, but you also could argue that it was a disappointing season, right? The loss to Virginia, the loss to Florida State. To me, last season is the season that could have been, right? That could have. So look at it that way. Let that motivate you, because that team was too good to go to UVA and lose that football game, to go to Florida State and lose those games against those two teams that were not good football teams last year.
No question. And you talking about earlier, it seems like the teams like that, when you're talking earlier about putting a game together or putting multiple games together, that's the start of seeing their team is rising, they're going up. But the reason why the inconsistency is because maybe the youth, or there's the way, I mean, the culture that you have to change in the locker room from a couple of years ago. Last year, I guess, was 18 under Fedora. Then you have Mack Brown coming in 19, and then COVID. I know COVID off the field caused problems.
Yes.
You think about normally the discipline of players or lack thereof being, or as far as grades or behavior, or this year it was one we've never had to deal with COVID-19. So not to make excuses. I know everybody says everybody had to deal with it, but that did play a factor for various reasons for that. Brian, before we let you go, how can people listen to you guys at Jones Angell and Company with the Tar Heel Sports Network?
Well, obviously you can listen to us at goheels.com, and then we're also on TuneIn. So, and then I'm not sure, you know, it varies week to week on Sirius XM. But if you get stuck and you can't find it, go to goheels.com, and you can find us on Saturdays, and hopefully we'll have a lot of good broadcasts, you know, for Carolina football this year. Like I say, I think they have a chance to be a really good football team, but now you just got to go out there and make it happen. So
we'll see how it goes. It's obviously a great time of year because we're all obviously talking. This is the talk period where we get a chance to talk and have see how it goes. But it's always fun once Labor Day rolls around. It seems like that's when the season starts. It goes by way too quick, especially those of us that love football.
And it's great on this side of it, right? Because we can say whatever we want to. We don't have to get hyper, right?
No doubt about it. I enjoyed it, my friend. Love to have you back. Maybe we can have you back mid-season, or certainly as the Tar Heels go to a bowl, or hopefully we'll see how they do maybe an ACC championship. That will be great to talk about and beyond. Good luck to the Tar Heels this year.
Hey, I enjoy being on, Dave. Hit me up anytime you need me on, man.
All right. I hope you have a great night. Appreciate you.
Same to you. All right, bye.
All right. Good night. Bye-bye. All right. Brian Simmons there with the Tar Heel Sports Network. And Sonny, definitely had a great time there with him. And appreciate you, man, for coming on tonight. Obviously, you're awesome. And I tell you what, you know how to win. Certainly, you're one, speaking of championships, you're one that definitely knows how to win championships. No doubt about it. Want to talk some? Let's talk some. You have time to talk some Pirate football tonight with me and some other issues
Yeah.
we're talking about?
Let's go. I'm always ready.
No
Brian was
question.
great. Brian was great, by the way.
Oh yeah, I like him. A great guy. I tell you what,
Yeah.
we're so excited to be able to have Bubba. Let me give a shout out to Bubba Rosenbaum, who is. I know his signal was not great, so he couldn't come on tonight, and he had some other obligations. Kyle is the same way. He had a meeting he had to be at, so unfortunately. But Sonny, I appreciate you pinch hitting tonight and having the opportunity to talk roundtable, and certainly a little bit there with Brian. Let's talk about the Pirates. What do you make of before we dive into? We said last time we had you on, we'll dive in a little bit about the Pirates as far as maybe some position by position or some players to watch out for. But what's your take on this whole thing with, do you think today's decision, which we found out last week about the worst kept secret in college football history with Texas and Oklahoma leaving for the SEC, do you think this is going to be majorly affect American and East Carolina?
I think it's going to affect East Carolina. I think it's going to affect all of college football if it really happens. I was at the SoCon Media Day today, and it was just interesting. Everyone talking about that, and even though it sounds like it's a done deal and definitely happening, there's a lot of people that said it's not a done deal for sure. So, and people in the know. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that long term. But I do think East Carolina and every school is really going to be affected by it because what's going to happen? What are these conferences going to look like? Is East Carolina going to be in the AAC? Is the AAC going to be bolstered and be even bigger and better, or is it going to start getting rated? So I think there's a lot of questions, and I think no one knows the answers, but I think there's a lot of different options out there. And with Mike Oresco talking about being aggressive, I mean, I think that's the attitude you have to try to bolster the American to make it even stronger.
Absolutely. You know what I was thinking about today is that I talked to Kyle beforehand, so to get his thoughts because I wanted to have his take on things. He and I love, and so does Bubba. I know you probably do too. This college alignment stuff is just very fascinating. I guess that's the word. It's not that I want anything bad to have to my alma mater, my school, East Carolina University, or the American, but it is fascinating. One thing that came to mind that I thought about today, Jay, is that isn't it interesting that you have a situation where the American was in Rhode Island, right? And they moved to Texas to be more of a central location, if you will, for the conference. But isn't that fascinating that we would have a conference office that's down in Texas, and you have Texas schools in the Big 12 now? And how about Oklahoma State? That those Texas schools in Oklahoma State need a home. I mean, I just don't see how the Big 12, and I could be wrong, and I was wrong before. I thought that was going to implode 10 years ago, the last time around. But I really believe this time is the death knell. Not that we want it to happen, but it is what it is. So now that it looks like it's going to happen, where do all these schools land? I mean, I'm hearing Kansas and Iowa State would go to the Big 10. Then I'm hearing there's a possibility. I was talking to Kyle about Oklahoma State and maybe TCU going to the Pac-12. Who knows? But I do know there's a lot of great schools. And if the American were smart, you put those schools in there, and you have a situation with the schools we already have, and maybe you can add in a BYU, a Boise in there. You could really have a super league, and not even like you go from literally. It's like I hate to use this term because I don't think the American's a bad conference, but from the people outside the American that use that term Power Five, this would be a rags to riches kind of thing, don't you think, Jay?
Yeah, I mean, I do, and what's going to be interesting to me is to see. Do like Brian was saying, do teams start poaching the American teams?
Yeah.
And that's where it's going to be scary because, if everything stays as is, then I think the Americans going to have an opportunity to go get BYU, Boise, teams like that. Some of the top teams from some of these other leagues that can add appeal to it. But what happens if somebody goes and gets UCF or Memphis or SMU? that's where it's going to be interesting, and the dominoes are going to fall. And that's why it's so important to be aggressive at the beginning to strengthen the lead, because if you're on your heels or waiting to see what unfolds, all it takes is for one team to leave, and then you're flat-footed.
Right, and you have a situation now where you have a lot of great teams in big markets now with Cincinnati. You look at Memphis, you look at UCF, USF, as a matter of fact. I know they've been down in football, but that's a great program with the Bulls. And you look at Houston with Dana there, and there's a lot of great schools. SMU with Sonny Dykes, you've got he's moved the program in the right direction, but you've got a lot of big markets. And I know it's not this time about footprint as far as media markets. That won't be a big deal this time. But when it comes to geography and when it comes to brand names, like if you get BYU and Boise, I tell you another team, Jay, that's not happy right now is Air Force, a program.
Yeah.
They want to. That would be another one that I would add. That would be a great one with having Navy. But it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. I think we're just the beginning of a lot of dominoes. I don't think that those two schools are going to be the only two that are going to leave a conference. To you?
No, I think this is going to be like a never-ending musical chairs game.
Yeah.
I just think that, there's so much at play. Then it's also, media markets, then potentially what schools in League A would allow, if there's an in-state rival, are they going to really want that rival into their league? And so there could be boxing out with regard to that. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic. But I just think that, unfortunately, I like the way college football used to be. And now it just seems like there's so many traditions and everything's getting blown up. And, it's just not going to be the same.
No, it's not. I want to ask you, obviously, being a media nerd, as you know, I know you were talking about the SoCon being there. Let's talk about that and other media days you're going to be at. And can you give us some of your takeaways from where you were? And obviously, some of the other, you're a smart dude. What about some of the other various media days around the country? And then I can add some of what I, from the outside looking in myself.
Yeah, so I was at the Southern Conference today. And just a bunch of really football powers in their conference that has so much history, and you just get to meet the coaches and all the people associated. It's first class league, and they're going to have really good teams this year. They had a great spring season as well. So, there's discussion about the Oklahoma, Texas, there as well, but. The thing you just realize is there's so many good people that are associated with college athletics, because I was talking to athletic directors and then the coaches, and I actually saw a good friend, Mark Wharton, who used to work at East Carolina as the athletic director at Chattanooga now. So it's good to catch up with him, and he's a great guy. And so just a lot of familiar faces. And then tomorrow I'll be at the Big South Media Day as well. So excited to see all the coaches and the commissioners down there. And everybody, these leagues do it the right way. Southern Conference was awesome today, and I know Big South will be the same tomorrow.
Well, Jay, can I be like your bodyguard? Because I'm sure. Talk about the food. I'm going to be a handler. I'll be like I'm Sonny's agent. No autographs, and then I'll get a plate of food with you, right?
You can do it. Hey, I'll always share with you. Yeah, in fact, we'll get an extra plate so we can get extras. We'll get a to-go box.
That's one thing. I've lost a lot of weight, but that would be those are tempting off my strict diet. My goodness, I probably need to stay away. If not, I'll gain all the weight that I've lost, 35 pounds. So let's talk about your take on the different ACC or different media days we've seen so far, because we have the American coming up next week on I believe the 3rd and 4th, if my memory serves me right. So coming up next week, what are some of the things that you're looking forward to with the American? Let's start with the American. If I'm Mike Oresco, you have I guess it's kind of like the platform of the century. I hate to use that term, but this is your chance, right? You always hear P6, Power 6. He's done a nice job. And I think that it's, most of the time when you hear these marketing campaigns, you just kind of roll your eyes. But the American in football and basketball, for example, have a lot of upsets. That, when quote unquote Power Five, they can hang with the big boys. When you look at Cincinnati, you look at UCF, there's a lot of schools that have done a nice job at that big level. How do you, if you're Mike Aresco, what's your plan of attack for next week when you know that the nation's going to be paying attention to you?
Well, I mean, I think the plan of attack has to be, how am I going to answer these questions? What's my plan moving forward? And what's my plan A, B, and C? Because there's going to be a lot of rotating parts. And I mean, I think you've got to be as honest with everybody, but also, also stealth. And I think these commissioners, there's a lot on their plate and figuring out all the moving parts. But I think it's important to be honest with the schools and also to get their honest feedback and get the intel from them as well. So I think, it's all right now. It's about putting your conference or your school in the best position possible, short-term and long-term. And I've always been impressed by what he's been able to do with this league and just strengthen it. And the marking and the notoriety of the league and the talent has continued to go up.
Well, I've told him several times on our show, and I mean it sincerely. I think he's the best commissioner in the nation. I really do. I sincerely mean that, because if you look at, no offense to Greg Sankey, but these guys that are in the big leagues like that, I mean, not that they couldn't mess it up. Okay, so I understand that. But if you're the commissioner of the SEC, right, you can do pretty much anything you want because you're the commissioner of the SEC. Yeah. You look at him being a underrated conference like the American. He's done a lot of nice things. That TV deal, number one, getting about $7 million a school. And then that's another question that would come to mind. If you can keep this group intact and you can add to this and add some Big 12 schools or merge or whatever the case may be, maybe pick up some teams like Boise, BYU, like we talked about, Air Force, all of a sudden you like I gave that scenario. But if you're Aresco, I mean, what are you waiting on? I remember when he was talking about we're comfortable 11 teams. Well, now's the time. Now is the time that you got to do expansion. If you don't, then it's kind of like the best defense is a good offense. When you have a situation where, okay, like you were talking about earlier, do you wait and let all these teams, or not teams, but conferences come in and raid your conference? Or you do like a John Swafford who goes out and just takes, like it's basically the ACC and the old Big East, was what most of the ACC is now. So if it were me, you got to do a John Swafford. You got to go out there and get as many teams from, if you have to pick and choose across the way, so be it. But I'm interested to see how that's going to play out next week for sure.
I do. Yeah, I do too. And I think the thing is, I know he's talked about being aggressive, and I think he will be. But it's interesting to, I wish you could kind of find out the true kind of behind the scenes part of this, because in a lot of senses they may not be able to be aggressive because they've got to wait to see what happens, because no one's going to leave the Big 12 if Texas and Oklahoma are going to stay. Now everyone knows they're probably leaving, and they made the announcement today, but like at what point can you start poaching schools? Or if those leave and then others leave, then who may poach someone from the American? Or would the American potentially be going after, Boise State and BYU right now and just trying to bolster it up from that angle? Or when can you go after a Big 12 school? That's what the interesting part is going to be. And, what place, if you're Iowa State or you're Texas A&M or, whatever TCU, when would you want to make the decision to leave potentially? And who would be your number one option? Would the American be that option, or would it be somewhere else?
No doubt about it. Bubba said it is on Wednesday for the league as far as the media days, and I'm going to just go ahead and put these up a few seconds at a time so folks can see with the different schools, those that are watching live, obviously, with starting out with 10:05 with SMU head coach Sonny Dykes, Reggie Robertson Jr., Delano Robinson. 10:35 will be Tulane head coach Willie Fritz, Michael Pratt, and Nick Anderson. And then let's see. So then it will be 11:05 Cincinnati head coach Luke Fickell. We'll have Desmond Ritter and Ahmad Gardner. 11:35, Houston head coach Dana Holgerson, Marcus Jones, and Clayton Tune. And then let's see, we've got one more. There we go. He's throwing more at me at the time. Okay, 12:05 will be UCF head coach Gus Malzahn. Nice pickup there by the Knights, by the way. Dylan Gabriel, amazing, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Kalia Davis, let's see. Memphis at 1:35 with head coach Ryan Silverfield, Calvin Austin III, Quindell Johnson. 2:05 is Temple head coach Rod Carey, Jaden Blue and Amir Tyler. And let's see here. We got one more for you. 2:35 is Navy head coach Ken Neomatololo, Kevin Brennan. And then 3:05, East Carolina head coach Mike Houston. We'll have Holt Nailers and Jaquan McMillan. So that gives you a little bit. Let's see. And then, we'll keep it. Thank you, Bubba. 3:35, South Florida head coach Jeff Scott. We'll have Demetrius Harris and Mickey LaPointe. At 4:05, Tulsa head coach Philip Montgomery will have Jackson Player and Keaton Stokes. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, for the players there and coaches for media days for the American. And that'll be all next Wednesday. We'll try to have that for you as we're going to be covering media day there for you, Jay. We'll be remotely, obviously, for the American. So a lot of good stuff there. I know between myself and Bubba, we'll have that all on Wednesday. So great time there. And with this league, with the American, Jay, I know Cincinnati's going to be good, but you could have a team like an East Carolina, for example. I've made the case. I don't think East Carolina is going to win 12 games or even 10 games, but I could easily see maybe 7 or 8 games. Don't you think, for the Pirates this year?
I think my opinion is, we really don't know how good this team can be, because we know that there's a lot of young talent that's got a lot of experience. Now, is it going to be a 2-win experience? Is that going to be a 2-win jump or a 4-win jump? I think this team could take a gigantic leap forward. I just think that, right now, to me, it's a 5 to 7 win team because of the schedule. But if this team gets off to a good start, I think they could win 8. I just think the thing that's tough is, the schedule is going to be difficult this year. But I think the start of this season is really going to be important to get off to solid ground and get confidence in the young players.
I'll tell you what, Jay, if you have check this out, if you have a win against App, and I'm not saying that App State is an easy cupcake, nor do I think South Carolina is an easy win, nor do I think the Marshall game is an easy win or Charleston Southern. But somehow, if you could rattle off 2 or 3 wins right then and there, I think they're a bowl team. If they go 2-2, they're going to have to go 2-2, in my opinion, that first month to have a shot at a bowl, because the American is a difficult league. Not saying it can't be done, but I really believe 2-2 is realistic. How they get those 2 wins and 2 losses, I don't know. But you have to win. What I'm saying is you're going to have to get at least 1 win between Appalachian State, South Carolina, or on the road against Marshall. I think they have a good shot to have the home game being home against Charleston Southern. No disrespect for them. But so if you can go 2-2 somehow, some way, I think that would be a good start.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's – of course, I want to go 4-0, but I think if you go 2-2, you're in a good spot, and that's very, very realistic. I just think this team is going to be so much better than last year. I think it's going to be a huge, vast improvement. To me, though, it's just all about the schedule, and I think it's in a normal year. If you have a little bit easier schedule, then I think, 8 wins would be very, very, realistic. I think this year it's going to be tough no matter how good they are, just because of the depth of this league and the out-of-conference schedule. And, how good is Marshall going to be, a new coach there?
Right.
How good is Appalachian going to be? Turnover there. Are they the same Appalachian State team, or have they taken a step back? South Carolina, a whole new situation. So there's a lot of question marks. The good thing that East Carolina has going is they've got consistency in their coaching staff.
Yep.
A lot of good players coming back, and they're on the right path.
No question. I think they're going to be a bowl team this year, and I think the next year, everybody says next year, but I truly believe 2022, I've been saying this for a couple of years now, 2022 is the year to watch out for the Pirates. I really firmly believe the next few years, the program is heading in the right direction. But right now, we're Appalachian State is on the clock coming up in September, Bank of America Stadium. We're all going to try to be there to support. I was told, I believe Bubba helped me out. Bubba's our numbers guy. I heard 30,000 seats, if I remember reading on Twitter, have been sold for the game. I don't know the breakdown as far as Pirates to Mountaineers, as far as fans are concerned. But Pirate Nation, I'll go ahead and tell you, I don't care how far you have to travel. I'm going to do my very best to be there. Book my hotel room. I want everybody. Jay, are you going to that game? Or you have to work?
I'm hopefully going to be sitting near you guys. Yeah, I've got a high school game that Friday, and then we'll see which college game Saturday. But I will be free Thursday, so hopefully we'll be in the same spot of the stadium cheering on our team.
I was wondering about that the very fact you'd probably have a Saturday game if you were able to do that Thursday night thing. That actually works out. And look, I've heard some people. This is silly, but I'll just say this. I'll put it out there. I've heard some people say, "Oh my God, you got to go to Charlotte." Well, look at our good friend Bubba Rosenbaum, who's too nice to say it on the air. Bubba Rosenbaum and his family, the Rosenbaums. If we had more Rosenbaums and Sunhalters out there, then we would have 100,000 going to the games. Those folks travel. The Sunhalters and the Rosenbaums travel better than anybody in the country. And he was like, we do that every single home game. They're traveling 3.5, 4 hours. So, hey, sometimes you can't make it because for a Sunday schedule, obviously with ball games, he's calling on Saturdays. We totally get it. But if you have any kind of way that you can get there because we need to have a lot of purple and gold at Bank of America Stadium in September.
I can't wait for the season to start, but just for all the fans to be back. And for it to be such a big game, for both schools, that atmosphere is going to be awesome and something that we, kind of missed out on last year, but it's back and it's so good to bring, college football and the fan bases and everybody together.
Well, I think that another thing that comes to my mind is there's, to me, and maybe corny or cheesy to say, but I believe that it's a bowl-like atmosphere. Being at Bank of America, you're in Charlotte, you have so much to do there. Great city. The Queen City's amazing. I've got a lot of great friends there that I would be able to see. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but the fact of the matter is that's a bowl-like atmosphere. They have bowl games there. We're going to be playing one of the first games in college football for 2021. Appalachian State, people don't understand the history we have with that school. Speaking of SoCon, Sonny, back in the 70s, I mean, we had a lot of our good friend Terry Gallagher could tell you all about that, about the great rivalry from the Pat Dye era. And, we were with the SoCon until we went independent. For those people watching and listening, they obviously were preaching to the choir. But Appalachian State is basically, the way I see it, is they're like the Pirates of the 90s and maybe of your era, Jay. They have really come on strong. And App State is a brand name of football. It's not just a North Carolina rivalry anymore. They're a national power now as far as football is concerned. And to act like this is not a big deal or a big game, like I've heard some Pirate fans, I sometimes wonder if they're in the wrong fan base, Jay, because we get no respect to begin with. So we shouldn't be dissing people, especially when they've won a whole bunch of ball games since they've been FBS.
Right, exactly. I mean, our program right now. We're not in a position now or ever to disrespect anybody, and we know how it is when other schools do that to us. So, to me, this is a huge game. I'm so excited. It's a marquee name, and to me, Appalachian State is a big name. East Carolina, big name, rivalry in state in the Panther Stadium. I mean, that's what you want. You want to have something. But the thing that a lot of people maybe don't realize is the fact that if you're going against a cupcake the first game of the year, you're focused the whole off season. You would hope that would be on, but it's not the same. It's not razor sharp compared to having a game you're really looking forward to. I guarantee you these players know they're going to be in the Panther Stadium going against Appalachian State. A lot of rivalries there, a big-time atmosphere. That changes the focus and the mindset in off-season workouts. And that's months of working out and having that razor focus. So not only is it important for the fans to get excited, I mean, no fan wants to go to a game, the first game of the year, where it's going to be 70-0. They want to have something to look forward to. Right. But for the players and coaches, It's huge having a marquee matchup week 1.
No question about it. By the way, fans, get your tickets, season tickets at ECUPirates.com, or you can go 1-800-ECU. I checked last week. I know they have around, I think it's 14,000 there. I tell you what, they're working their tails off right now. They're 12,000. They're trying to get to 14,000. They very well could. And the one thing that scares me, especially for that South Carolina game, Jay, is a whole bunch of South Carolina fans. They travel well. I'm praying that a whole bunch of Pirate fans will do the right thing, and even I don't care how far they have to travel. Be in Greenville. Yeah, what is it? September the 9th, I think it is, for that Saturday, something like that, around there. But to be there for that game and all the Pirate games, because this year it could be. And Jay, you've played there in Greenville, and you're a college football player. When you have that kind of atmosphere, how much? Let me ask you this question: how much of a difference does it make versus the poor guys? You didn't have that situation where you didn't have to play with fans, but how much of an impact did it have on you playing with fans?
It made everything was different. Every positive impact you could say was because of the experience at Greenville and East Carolina, and with the full fan support. I mean, that's what you play for. Like, you play for the games, you play for that atmosphere. Like, it's no fun playing in a stadium where fans don't care. I mean, there are so many games we played, at Rice, at, some of these schools, at Tulsa, Tulane, where no one's in the stadium. I mean, that's boring. Like, you play, that's why you practice so hard, and that's why you want to be on a big stage, have people that care. I mean, that's what you look forward to. And I mean this, like, the fan support is everything for recruiting, for the players there, for the community, for the support, for the school, for money, everything. I mean, East Carolina is very lucky to have such great fans. This year, the football team just got to take that step forward and get everybody excited by getting more wins.
And fans, that's the way that we do it. We get wins. And I know that this is, I know this personally, you get wins for the Pirates. And guess what happens? They're going to, when we have a football season, this is what's going to happen. When we have a winning season in football, again, they're going to announce the indoor practice facility. So if you want the indoor practice facility, then you better show up to these games, because we win the games, we're going to get the start of the indoor practice facility. That's what they're waiting on right now, is to have that buzz, obviously, for the winning season and going to a bowl. And it doesn't matter, Jay. Sonny, you got to the point where we were going in your era, and just beyond that, we were going to so many bowls. It got to be where, oh, God, we're going to that bowl. Now, I don't care what bowl it is. I'll be so excited like it's the Rose Bowl, my friend.
Yeah. Maybe we can go to the Rose Bowl. That would be awesome. But
oh, my God, I wish. I totally wish.
But as long as it has a bowl at the end, and, there's some fun trip for the team, I mean, I'm going to be jacked up.
I can't wait. And I know that you got so you got Big South tomorrow, you said. I know. And do you have any final thoughts before we go? We'll put this podcast to bed, my friend.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an exciting time of the year. I mean, fall practice is about to start. NFL starting to get going here. This is, we're in football season. So you got another month to kind of get ready for it, buckle up, and then it's going to be here before we know it. But I'm just so excited to see East Carolina, because we know they're going to be better. The Pirates are going to be better. Just how much better? How many steps forward can the team take this season with a tough schedule? But it's going to start out, in a big-time atmosphere, and I think we're going to learn a lot against Appalachian State.
It's going to be great. I appreciate you, Sonny. Good luck, and eat some food for me and gain some extra weight for me, and eat my share, so to speak, and look forward to having you back on very soon. I appreciate you coming on tonight, as always, pinch hitting, and let us know. We'll have to have you back on to let us know how these other media days go, and see if you're hearing anything as far as conference realignment. And hopefully next week we'll find out again, fans, about the media day, August the 4th. So we'll find out that for sure with Mike Oresco, and maybe he'll give us some insight on how things are going. But until the meantime, we'll have some more shows coming up. We've had a lot of great content, as we have Trip Weaver coming up, obviously, for the Pirates, obviously with the defense. We're talking to him. A lot of other great guests coming up. This week we had former shows. We've had Jay Sunhalter on, and different guests. check those out in the archive. And whatever you do, don't forget to like us and subscribe on our YouTube channel. We're at The Sports Objective on Instagram, at The Sports OBJ on Twitter, as you see there on the screen. So check us out, like our Facebook page, and so much more. All right, for Brian Simmons, Jay Sunhalter. Jay, man, thank you so much for coming on tonight. You're always such a great guy and a great guest. We appreciate you so much, my friend.
You're the best, Dave. Thanks so much, and thanks for everything you do to support the program and football overall. It's always great to be with you, and look forward to catching up with you soon.
All right, until next time, we'll see you soon right here, and go Pirates.
Surrounded, put your crossbones up and lean side to side. Set the tone with your pirate pride. Put your crossbones up for your pirates. Ain't no business going out the water. Put your crossbones up and lean side to side. Set the tone with your pirate pride. Put your crossbones up if you're a pirate. Let the other team know we got them surrounded.